My name is Serafina, and I am 34 years old. Last Christmas, I discovered something that shattered my entire understanding of family loyalty. When my parents deliberately excluded my adopted daughter from gift giving and made cruel comments about her background, I thought it was simple prejudice. But what I uncovered while seeking justice revealed a conspiracy 20 years in the making, one that involved stolen inheritance, forged documents, and a family secret so devastating it would destroy relationships forever. The revenge I orchestrated was sweeter than any Christmas dessert. Hey everyone. Before we dive into this wild family drama, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Are you cozy at home taking a break at work, or maybe listening while doing holiday shopping? If you have ever dealt with toxic family dynamics during the holidays, you will definitely want to stick around for this one. Hit that like button if you are ready for some serious family karma, and do not forget to subscribe, because trust me, you will not want to miss how this Christmas revenge story unfolds. Christmas Eve at my parents' house in suburban Connecticut had always been our family tradition. The sprawling colonial home where I grew up was decorated with the same ornaments from my childhood, the smell of my mother's famous sugar cookies filling the air. But this year felt different from the moment my daughter Zara and I walked through the front door. Zara is 8 years old, bright as sunshine, with beautiful dark curls and eyes that sparkle with curiosity. I adopted her 3 years ago from the foster care system after her biological parents lost custody due to addiction issues. She had become the absolute light of my life, calling me Mom, with such genuine love that it brought tears to my eyes every single time. My parents, Margaret and Robert Thornfield, had always been what I would call emotionally distant, but financially generous. Dad worked in investment banking. Mom was a retired real estate agent from old Connecticut money. They lived in their perfect house, with their perfect reputation in their perfect neighborhood where everyone knew everyone else's business. When we arrived that evening, something felt off immediately. Mom's smile seemed forced. Dad barely acknowledged Zara beyond a stiff nod. My younger brother Marcus was there with his wife Jennifer and their twin boys ages 6. The contrast in how my parents treated the children was stark and uncomfortable. During dinner, the conversation flowed around Zara as if she were invisible. When she tried to share something about her school play, Mom would change the subject. When she complimented Grandma's cooking, the response was lukewarm at best. I kept shooting warning glances at my parents, but they seemed determined to maintain this cold distance. The real shock came during present time. We gathered around the enormous Christmas tree, and my parents had clearly spent a fortune on gifts. Marcus's boys received multiple expensive presents each: video game consoles, designer clothes, sports equipment. When it came time for Zara, there was nothing, absolutely nothing. "Oh dear," Mom said with fake concern, "we must have forgotten something in the other room." But she made no move to get anything, and Dad just sat there, looking uncomfortable. Zara's face fell, but she tried to be brave. "That is okay," she whispered, though I could see her fighting back tears. That was when Mom delivered the killing blow. "Well, sweetheart," she said in that condescending tone, "Christmas gifts are really for family children. You understand, do not you? We hardly know anything about your background." The room went silent. Marcus and Jennifer looked mortified. Dad studied his brandy like it contained the secrets of the universe. I felt my blood turn to ice. "Excuse me, now Serafina," Dad finally spoke up, "do not make this into something it is not. We just think it is important to maintain certain boundaries." "Boundaries?" I stood up, my voice shaking with rage. "She is my daughter. She is your granddaughter." "Well, technically," Mom began. I did not let her finish. I scooped up Zara, grabbed our coats, and headed for the door. "We are leaving now." "Serafina, do not be so dramatic," Mom called after us. I turned back one last time. "Dramatic? You just told an 8-year-old child that she does not matter because she is not blood. You have no idea what you just started." The drive home was torture. Zara cried silently in the back seat, and I had to pull over twice because I was shaking so badly with anger. How could they be so cruel? How could they treat an innocent child like that? When we got home, I tucked Zara into bed and promised her that what happened was not her fault and was not okay. I told her that some people have broken hearts, and that makes them say broken things. She nodded solemnly and asked if Santa would still come. I assured her he would, and I spent the next hour wrapping every single present I had hidden away. But sleep would not come for me. I paced my living room, fury building with each step. This was not just about Christmas gifts. This was about respect, about family, about treating a child with basic human decency. My parents had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Around 2 in the morning, I made a decision. I was going to make them understand exactly what they had done. I was going to make them face consequences for their cruelty. I had always been the peacekeeper in my family, the one who smoothed over conflicts and maintained harmony, but those days were over. I started by calling my best friend, Sarah, who worked as a private investigator. Even though it was late, she answered immediately when she saw my name. "Sarah, what is wrong?" Through tears of rage, I told her everything that had happened. Sarah had met Zara many times and adored her. By the time I finished the story, Sarah was just as furious as I was. "What do you want to do about it?" she asked. "I want to hurt them the way they hurt her. I want them to understand that actions have consequences." "Okay," Sarah said slowly. "But if we are going to do this, we are going to do it right. We are going to find out everything there is to know about your parents' finances, their social standing, their reputation in that precious neighborhood of theirs. We are going to find their pressure points. I'll leave that to me. But Sarah, once we start down this road, there is no going back. Are you sure you want to do this?" I looked toward Zara's bedroom, thinking about her brave little face, trying not to cry. They made this choice when they decided to be cruel to an innocent child. I am absolutely sure. The day after Christmas, while Zara was at my friend Emma's house, having a proper holiday playdate, Sarah came over with her laptop and a determination that matched my own. What we thought would be a simple investigation into my parents' social vulnerabilities turned into something much more complex and disturbing. Sarah had connections everywhere: former colleagues from her police days, contacts in banking, people who specialized in background checks and financial investigations. She started with the basics: social media, monitoring public records, searches, neighborhood, gossip networks. "Your parents are pretty active on social media," Sarah observed, scrolling through my mother's Facebook page. "Margaret posts constantly about charity work, country club events, family achievements, very image conscious." I leaned over her shoulder, watching Mom's carefully curated online presence unfold. Every photo was perfect, every post designed to showcase the ideal Connecticut family life. There were dozens of pictures of Marcus's boys, glowing captions about being a devoted grandmother. Not a single mention of Zara anywhere. "Look at this," Sarah pointed to a post from Thanksgiving. She talks about being grateful for her biological grandchildren and the pure joy of blood family. This woman is laying groundwork for excluding Zara deliberately. My stomach clenched. This was not a spur of the moment cruelty. This was calculated, intentional exclusion. "What about Dad?" I asked. Sarah pulled up Robert's LinkedIn profile and started cross-referencing his business connections. "Your father is more careful online, but he has some interesting financial patterns. He has been moving money around quite a bit lately. Large transfers, investment changes, property transactions. That does not sound unusual for someone in his position." "Maybe not, but the timing is interesting. A lot of this activity started right around when you adopted Zara." A chill ran down my spine. "You think they were planning this exclusion from the beginning? I think your parents have been very deliberate about their financial planning, and I think they have been very specific about who they consider family." Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing databases I did not even know existed. Years of investigative work had given her skills that bordered on frightening. "Sarah, I need you to think carefully about something. Has your family ever talked about inheritance, wills, family money?" "Not really. I mean, I always assumed there would be something eventually, but it was never discussed openly." "Why?" "Because your parents have been very busy with their estate planning lately. Multiple attorney visits, trust modifications, beneficiary updates. And here is the interesting part. They have been working with a law firm that specializes in what they call bloodline protection trusts." The term made my blood run cold. What does that mean? It means they have been setting up legal structures specifically designed to ensure inheritance only goes to biological descendants. They can exclude adopted children, stepchildren, anyone who does not share actual DNA. I sat back in my chair feeling like the world had shifted beneath my feet. So, this was never about Zara being difficult or them needing time to adjust. This was about money. It gets worse, Sarah said, grimly pulling up another set of documents. I found something else while I was digging through property records. Your parents own way more real estate than you probably realize. That house they live in, that is just the tip of the iceberg. She showed me a list that made my head spin. Rental properties throughout Connecticut and Massachusetts. Commercial real estate in Boston. Investment properties in Florida. The portfolio was worth millions. How did they accumulate all this? I wondered aloud. That is where things get really interesting. Sarah's expression had changed from determined to deeply troubled. Some of these properties have a very specific history. They were purchased using funds that came from a trust that was originally set up by your great-grandmother. Great-grandmother Eleanor, but she died when I was little. Right. And according to the original trust documents, I managed to access that inheritance was supposed to be divided equally among all of Eleanor's great-grandchildren when the trust matured, which would include you, Marcus, and any children you might have, adopted or biological. My mouth went dry. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I am saying that your parents have been systematically restructuring family assets to exclude not just Zara, but potentially you as well, especially now that you have an adopted child. They have been using legal loopholes and trust modifications to essentially steal inheritance that was meant for multiple generations. I stood up and started pacing, my mind racing. So, when they excluded Zara from Christmas gifts, when they made those comments about family, children, and boundaries, they were not just being cruel, they were protecting money. Exactly. And here is the kicker, I think Marcus knows. Look at this. Sarah pulled up email records she had somehow accessed. There have been multiple communications between Marcus and your parents about protecting family assets and ensuring appropriate distribution of inherited wealth. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My own brother, who had sat there silently while my daughter was humiliated, was actively participating in this financial conspiracy. They have been planning this for years, I realized. Probably since before I even started the adoption process. The timeline definitely suggests that. Your parents started restructuring trusts and meeting with specialized attorneys right around the time you first mentioned wanting to adopt. I felt a cold clarity settling over me, replacing the hot rage I had been carrying since Christmas Eve. This was not just about Christmas presents or family dinner rudeness. This was about systematic exclusion, financial manipulation, and a level of calculation that was breathtaking in its cruelty. Sarah, I said slowly, I need you to dig deeper. I need you to find out everything. Every property, every trust, every legal maneuver. I need documentation of all of it. What are you planning? I am planning to use their own weapons against them. They want to play games with family, money, and legal technicalities. They want to exclude my daughter based on bloodline politics, fine. But they made one critical mistake. What is that? They assumed I would just accept it quietly like I always have. They assumed I would be the same peacekeeper I have always been, that I would prioritize family harmony over justice. I looked toward the photo of Zara on my mantelpiece, her bright smile filling me with resolve. But they hurt my child. And that changes everything. Sarah grinned, and for the first time since Christmas Eve I smiled back. So, we are really doing this. Oh, we are absolutely doing this. But we are going to be smart about it. We are going to be thorough. And we are going to make sure that when the dust settles, justice is not just served, it is served ice cold. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah and I worked like investigators, building a federal case. What we discovered went far beyond simple inheritance manipulation. It was a systematic pattern of financial abuse that had been going on for decades. The breakthrough came when Sarah managed to contact Eleanor's original estate attorney, a man named Harrison Walsh, who is now in his 70s, but still sharp as a tack. When Sarah explained who we were and what we suspected, his reaction was immediate and telling. I have been wondering when someone would finally start asking questions, he said during our meeting at his downtown Hartford office. Your great-grandmother's trust was very specific about her intentions, and what your parents have done is not just unethical, it may actually be illegal. He pulled out files that he had apparently been keeping for exactly this conversation. Eleanor Thornfield was very clear that her wealth should benefit all of her descendants equally. She specifically included provisions for adopted children, stepchildren, and what she called children of the heart. She had been adopted herself, you see, and she understood that family is about love, not just blood. The original trust documents made my parents' manipulations look even worse. Great-grandmother Eleanor had created a structure designed to support education, housing, and general welfare for all her descendants. The trust had grown substantially over the years and was worth more than I had ever imagined. So what exactly have my parents done wrong legally, I asked. They have been acting as trustees with a clear conflict of interest, modifying trust terms to benefit themselves and their preferred heirs while excluding rightful beneficiaries. They have essentially been embezzling from their own family members. Harrison handed me a thick folder. I have been documenting their modifications and trust amendments for years, hoping someone would eventually challenge them. With your permission, I would like to help you take legal action, but I was not ready for lawyers yet. I had a different plan in mind, one that would be far more satisfying than simple legal proceedings. My next stop was Marcus. I had been debating whether to confront him directly, but I decided it was time to see exactly where my brother stood. I showed up at his house on a Saturday morning when I knew Jennifer would be at her yoga class and the boys would be at their various sports activities. Marcus answered the door looking guilty before I even said a word. Sarah, look, about Christmas Eve. Cut the crap. Marcus, I know about the trusts. I know about the inheritance manipulation. I know you have been working with Mom and Dad to exclude me and Zara from family money. His face went pale. How did you? Did you really think you could systematically steal from your own family and nobody would ever find out? Marcus let me into his house, and we sat in his pristine living room while I laid out everything Sarah and I had discovered. I watched my brother's expression change from guilt to defensiveness to something approaching panic. It was not supposed to be about stealing, he said finally. Mom and Dad just wanted to make sure the money stayed in the bloodline. They said it was what great-grandmother Eleanor would have wanted. That is complete bullshit, and you know it. I have seen Eleanor's original trust documents. She specifically included provisions for adopted children. Marcus ran his hands through his hair. Sarah, you do not understand the pressure I have been under. Jennifer's medical bills from the fertility treatments, the boys' private school tuition, the mortgage on this place. Mom and Dad offered to help with everything if I just went along with their trust modifications. So you sold out your sister and your niece for money. It was not like that. It was exactly like that. I stood up disgusted. You sat there and watched them humiliate an 8-year-old child, and you said nothing because you were protecting your own financial interests. What do you want me to say, Sarah? What do you want me to do? I want you to choose a side, Marcus. Because what is coming next is going to destroy Mom and Dad's reputation and probably their financial security. You can either be part of the solution, or you can go down with them. I explained my plan, watching Marcus's face grow increasingly horrified. When I finished, he sat in silence for several minutes. You are really going to do this? They made this choice when they decided to be cruel to my daughter and steal from their own family. This is not revenge, Marcus. This is justice. And if I help you, then maybe we can salvage some kind of relationship after this is over. But if you stand with them, then you are my enemy too. Marcus looked around his expensive house, clearly calculating costs and benefits. Finally, he nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? Having Marcus on my side opened up possibilities I had not considered before. He had access to family documents I would never have been able to get. He knew about upcoming family events and social commitments. Most importantly, he could provide information about Mom and Dad's current activities and plans. The next piece of my strategy involved Jennifer, Marcus's wife. I had always liked Jennifer, and she had been visibly uncomfortable during the Christmas Eve disaster. When I approached her separately, her reaction confirmed what I had suspected. Sarah, I have been feeling sick about that night, she admitted over coffee while our kids played at the local park. What your parents did to Zara was absolutely unforgivable. I wanted to say something, but Marcus told me to stay out of it. Would you be willing to help me make sure something like this never happens again? Jennifer's eyes lit up with something approaching relief. What do you need? Jennifer turned out to be an unexpected ally. As someone who had married into the family, she had her own perspective on my parents' manipulative behavior. She also had connections throughout their social circle, other country club members, charity board colleagues, neighbors who had watched the Thornfield family drama unfold over the years. Your mother talks constantly about family values and proper child rearing, Jennifer told me. She gives advice to other grandmothers about maintaining appropriate boundaries with grandchildren. If people knew what she actually did to Zara, that is exactly what I am counting on. My final major ally came from an unexpected source. Sarah's investigation had uncovered that my parents' housekeeper Maria had been with the family for over 15 years. She had watched me grow up, had been present during countless family dramas, and had apparently been keeping her own observations about my parents' behavior. When Sarah suggested we approach Maria, I was hesitant. But it turned out that Maria had been waiting for someone to ask the right questions. Your parents, they are not good people, Maria said bluntly during our discreet meeting at a coffee shop across town. They say terrible things about people when they think nobody is listening. They talk about you and your daughter like you are problems to be managed. Maria had been present during multiple conversations between my parents about the adoption situation and protecting family assets. She had heard them laughing about their Christmas Eve strategy, planning exactly how they would handle Zara's exclusion. They thought it was funny, Maria said, her voice heavy with disgust. They called it teaching lessons about real family. More importantly, Maria was willing to provide testimony about my parents' actual character versus their public image. She had years of observations about their treatment of service workers, their attitudes toward people they considered beneath them, and their private conversations about money and family control. By the middle of January, I had built a comprehensive case file and a network of allies that even Sarah was impressed with. We had legal documentation of financial impropriety, witness testimony about character and behavior, and insider access to my parents' current activities and future plans. But the most important element of my strategy was still coming together: the public revelation that would destroy their carefully constructed reputation and force them to face consequences for their actions. I had identified the perfect opportunity, and it was approaching fast. My parents were hosting their annual charity gala in February, a high society event that they used to showcase their philanthropic image and social standing. This year's theme was supporting children in need, and the guest list included everyone who mattered in their social circle. It was going to be the perfect stage for my parents to learn what real consequences looked like. The annual Thornfield Charity Gala was always the social event of the winter season in their Connecticut town. This year's Supporting Children in Need theme was particularly ironic given recent events, but I had to admire my parents' audacity. The February evening was crisp and clear, perfect weather for what I had planned. I arrived fashionably late, wearing the elegant black dress that I knew would remind everyone of family photos from happier times. Zara was safely at Sarah's house for a sleepover, blissfully unaware of what her mother was about to unleash. The country club ballroom was decorated in soft pastels with donation displays, showcasing various children's charities that my parents supported financially but never personally engaged with. Margaret was holding court near the silent auction items, wearing her finest jewelry and accepting compliments on the event's organization. Robert was networking by the bar, discussing investment strategies with other wealthy attendees. They both spotted me immediately, and I could see the surprise and discomfort on their faces. They had not expected me to show up after our Christmas confrontation. Serafina, Mom, approached with her fake smile firmly in place. What a lovely surprise. I did not realize you were planning to attend. I would not miss it for the world, Mom. Especially not an event supporting children in need. That cause is very close to my heart these days. Dad joined us, looking nervous. How is everything going, sweetheart? How is your daughter? Zara is wonderful, Dad. Thank you for asking. She has been asking about her grandparents, though. wondering why they do not love her. The color drained from both their faces, but before they could respond, I excused myself to work the room. I had strategic conversations to conduct. My first stop was the table where Harrison Walsh sat with several other prominent attorneys and community leaders. I had invited him as my guest, and he was already deep in conversation about estate planning ethics. "Harrison, I would love for you to meet some people," I said, steering the conversation toward my parents' table. "I think you have some fascinating insights about family, trust management that this group would appreciate." My next target was the charity's board president, a distinguished woman named Catherine Winters, who took children's welfare very seriously. I had done my homework on Catherine's background. She had fostered several children herself and was passionate about adoption advocacy. "Catherine, I have been meaning to talk to you about something important. I recently discovered some concerning attitudes toward adopted children in our community, and I think it relates directly to tonight's mission." The seeds were planted. Now I needed to water them. Marcus appeared at my elbow, looking sweaty despite the air conditioning. "Sarah, what are you doing?" "Exactly what I told you I would do. Are you still with me, or do you want to go warn them?" He glanced toward our parents, who were watching us from across the room with growing anxiety. "I am with you. But are you sure about this? I have never been more sure of anything in my life." At exactly 8:30 during the traditional speech portion of the evening, I made my move. The MC had just finished thanking major donors when I approached the microphone. "Excuse me, I would like to add something if I may." My parents looked horrified, but they could not stop me without causing a scene. I smiled graciously and took the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. For those who do not know me, I am Serafina Thornfield, Margaret and Robert's daughter. I wanted to share something personal tonight that relates directly to our mission of supporting children in need." The room grew quiet, sensing drama in the air. 3 years ago, I adopted a beautiful little girl named Zara from the foster care system. It was the best decision I ever made, and she brought so much joy to our family. Or so I thought. I could see my parents frantically whispering to each other, trying to figure out how to stop this. You see, I recently learned something shocking about how some people in our community really feel about children who need support. I discovered that there are adults who believe that adopted children are not real family members. Adults who think it is acceptable to exclude children from family events and even family inheritances simply because those children were not born into wealth. Murmurs started rippling through the crowd. Catherine Winters was leaning forward intently. "In fact, just last Christmas, I watched my own parents deliberately exclude my 8-year-old daughter from gift giving and tell her that Christmas presents were only for family children. They explained that they needed to maintain boundaries because they did not know anything about her background." Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Several people turned to stare at my parents, whose faces had gone ashen. But that was just the beginning. Thanks to some excellent investigative work, I also discovered that these same individuals have been systematically manipulating family trust funds to exclude adopted children from inheritances that were specifically intended to support all descendants, regardless of how they join the family. Harrison Walsh stood up in the back of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I can confirm these allegations. As the original estate attorney for the Thornfield Family Trust, I have documentation showing decades of unauthorized modifications designed to exclude rightful beneficiaries." The room erupted in shocked conversation. Several board members were already reaching for their phones. "So, tonight," I continued as we gathered to support children in need, "I want everyone to understand that some children are being hurt by the very people who claim to champion their welfare. My parents have stolen from their own family members and emotionally abused an innocent child, all while hosting charity events and accepting praise for their generosity." Margaret tried to approach the microphone, but Marcus intercepted her. Jennifer was filming everything on her phone, as were several other guests. The irony is that my great-grandmother who established the original family trust was herself adopted. She specifically structured her estate to ensure that all children, regardless of their origins, would be supported and loved. My parents have perverted her legacy while pretending to honor family values. I handed the microphone back to the stunned MC and walked calmly toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear my parents trying to do damage control, but the crowd was already turning against them. In the parking lot, Marcus caught up with me. Jesus, Sarah, you really did it. This was just the opening act, Marcus. Wait until the legal proceedings start. Wait until the IRS gets involved in their trust modifications. Wait until the state attorney general's office reviews their charity management. My phone was already buzzing with calls from reporters. Sarah had tipped off several journalists who specialized in financial crime and social corruption stories. The most satisfying part was not the public humiliation, though, that was gratifying. It was knowing that my parents would now face real consequences for their actions. Legal consequences, financial consequences, social consequences that would last for years. But most importantly, Zara would never again have to wonder why her grandparents did not love her. Because after tonight, she would understand that the problem was never with her, it was with them. The morning after the gala, my phone started ringing at 6 a.m. and did not stop for 3 days. The story had exploded across social media overnight, with videos from the event being shared thousands of times. Local news stations were calling it charity, gala corruption exposed, and family trust scandal rocks Connecticut elite. Sarah arrived at my house with coffee and a stack of newspapers, grinning from ear to ear. Have you seen the coverage? This is better than we could have hoped for. The Hartford Courant had run a front-page story with the headline, "Prominent Couple Accused of Trust Fund Fraud and Child Abuse." The article included quotes from Harrison Walsh, statements from several charity board members, and even a brief interview with Maria, who had decided to go public with her observations about my parents' character. But the real devastation was happening on social media. Jennifer had posted her video of my speech on Facebook, and it had been shared over 10,000 times in 12 hours. The comments section was a brutal takedown of my parents' reputation. "I always thought Margaret Thornfield seemed fake," wrote one country club member. "Now I know why. How can you abuse your own granddaughter and then host charity events for children? Disgusting," commented another. "Robert Thornfield managed my investments for years. I am pulling my money," immediately declared a former client. The social destruction was swift and comprehensive. My parents' carefully constructed image was crumbling in real time, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Marcus called around noon, sounding exhausted. "Mom and Dad want to meet with you. They are talking about lawyers and damage control and trying to work something out." "Tell them I will see them in court," I replied. With Harrison Walsh representing my interests and Zara's inheritance rights, "Sarah, they are really panicking. Mom has been crying for hours and Dad is talking about selling properties to cover legal costs." Good. Maybe now they understand what consequences feel like. That afternoon brought even better news. Catherine Winters called to inform me that the charity board had voted unanimously to remove my parents from all leadership positions and return their donations. Several other organizations they supported were conducting reviews of their involvement. "We cannot have people representing our mission who treat children this way," Catherine explained. "The board was unanimous that their behavior contradicts everything we stand for." The financial consequences started hitting within days. Dad's investment clients were pulling their accounts after seeing the news coverage. Mom's real estate referrals dried up as word spread through their social network. The country club was reportedly discussing their membership status, but the legal consequences were going to be the most satisfying. Harrison Walsh had filed papers with the probate court challenging every trust modification my parents had made over the past 20 years. The state attorney general's office had opened an investigation into possible financial elder abuse, since some of the trust changes had been made while Eleanor was still alive but mentally declining. The IRS was reviewing their charitable deductions to determine if they had claimed tax benefits for donations made with funds that were illegally diverted from family trusts. The penalties for that kind of fraud could be substantial. Most importantly, Zara was going to receive everything that was rightfully hers. Harrison estimated that her share of the original trust, with interest and growth over the years, would be enough to pay for her entire education and provide significant financial security for her future. On Wednesday evening, 3 days after the gala, my parents finally swallowed their pride and called me directly. "Serafina, please." Mom's voice was shaky and desperate. "We need to talk. We can work this out as a family." We stopped being a family when you told my daughter she did not matter because she was not blood, I replied coldly. We made a mistake, Dad interjected. We handled Christmas poorly. But destroying our lives will not fix anything. You destroyed your own lives when you chose money over family. When you chose cruelty over kindness. When you chose to hurt an innocent child to protect your wealth. What do you want from us? Mom was crying now. What will it take to make this stop? I want you to face the full legal and social consequences of your actions. I want Zara to receive every penny that great-grandmother Eleanor intended for her. And I want you both to understand that being wealthy does not give you the right to be cruel. And if we cooperate, if we agree to all the financial settlements, I considered this carefully. Then, maybe in about 10 years, when Zara is old enough to understand what happened and decide for herself, we might have a conversation about forgiveness. But that will be her choice, not mine. The conversation ended with my parents agreeing to cooperate fully with the legal proceedings in exchange for my agreeing not to pursue additional criminal charges. They would restore all trust funds to their original terms, pay substantial penalties for their unauthorized modifications, and cover all legal costs for Harrison's representation. They would also write a formal apology letter to Zara, acknowledging their wrongdoing and taking full responsibility for their behavior. Whether Zara ever chose to read that letter would be entirely up to her. Marcus and Jennifer's relationship with my parents became significantly strained after their support of my actions became public. But Jennifer told me privately that she was proud to have stood up for what was right regardless of the family drama it caused. Your daughter deserved better, she said. All children deserve better. I am glad someone finally held them accountable. The most unexpected outcome was the response from other families in similar situations. Harrison Walsh started receiving calls from people who suspected their own trust funds had been manipulated by controlling relatives. The story had apparently inspired others to question family financial arrangements that had never seemed quite right. Sarah joked that I had accidentally started a movement for inheritance justice. But honestly, if my family's drama could help other people protect their children's rights, then something good had come from all the pain. By the end of that week, my parents had resigned from all their charity boards, transferred the house to a smaller property outside their former social circle, and begun the process of financial restructuring that would restore Eleanor's original trust intentions. Their reputation was permanently damaged, their social standing destroyed, their financial security significantly reduced. But most importantly, they would never again have the power to hurt Zara or exclude her from what was rightfully hers. Justice, it turned out, was even sweeter than revenge. 6 months later, sitting in the garden of our new house, purchased with Zara's restored inheritance money, I watched my daughter plant flowers with the focused determination of someone who understands that beautiful things require patience and care. The legal battles were over, the trust funds had been restored, and life had settled into something resembling peace. The house we bought was smaller than my parents' mansion, but infinitely warmer. Zara had chosen her own paint colors for her bedroom, a cheerful yellow that she said reminded her of sunshine after storms. She was right, as she often was, about things that mattered. Mom, do you think the butterflies will like these flowers? She asked, carefully patting soil around a cluster of marigolds. I think they will love them, sweetheart. Just like how people who matter will love you for exactly who you are. She nodded seriously, then grinned. Sarah says butterflies are good judges of character. Sarah had become like family to us over these months, along with Harrison Walsh, who visited regularly and had started teaching Zara chess. Jennifer and Marcus brought their boys over for weekend barbecues, and even Maria had joined our chosen family circle, cooking elaborate meals while sharing stories about her own grandchildren. The legal resolution had exceeded even Harrison's expectations. The restored trust fund would not only cover Zara's education but provide her with substantial financial independence as an adult. My parents had been required to pay additional penalties that went directly into educational funds for adopted children throughout Connecticut. More importantly, the investigation had uncovered similar trust manipulation cases involving other wealthy families. Harrison was now working with a team of attorneys to establish legal protections specifically designed to prevent the kind of inheritance discrimination that my parents had practiced. Your great-grandmother would be proud, Harrison had told me during our final settlement meeting. Eleanor's vision of supporting all children equally is finally being fully realized, and it is inspiring legal changes that will protect families for generations. My parents had kept their word about the apology letter, though it took them 4 attempts to write something that Harrison deemed adequate. The final version acknowledged their cruelty, took full responsibility for their actions, and promised to never interfere in our lives again, unless specifically invited. Zara had read the letter with me. Present asked a few clarifying questions about what certain words meant, then carefully filed it away in her special box where she kept important documents. "Do you want to talk about how the letter made you feel?" I had asked. "It made me feel sad for them," she said thoughtfully. "They must be very lonely if they think love only works with blood. Our family is much better because we chose each other." The wisdom of 8-year-olds never ceased to amaze me. The social consequences for my parents had been lasting and severe. Their former friends had largely abandoned them, their business relationships had collapsed, and they had been quietly asked to leave the country club. They moved to a modest apartment in a different town and were reportedly living very differently than before. Marcus occasionally provided updates, though he maintained strict boundaries about family discussions. "Mom asks about you and Zara sometimes," he had mentioned recently. "I think she genuinely regrets what happened, but she still does not really understand why it was so wrong." I suspected my mother would never fully comprehend the depth of her cruelty, but that was no longer my responsibility to fix. My only job now was to protect and nurture the family Zara and I had built together. The most unexpected gift from this entire experience had been discovering how many people were willing to stand up for what was right when it mattered. Jennifer's courage in supporting us, despite family pressure, Harrison's decades of patient documentation waiting for justice, Maria's willingness to speak truth about character versus reputation. All of these people had chosen integrity over convenience. Zara was thriving in ways that went far beyond financial security. She was more confident, more vocal about her needs and feelings, more willing to trust that the adults in her life would protect her. Her school performance had improved dramatically once she no longer carried the burden of wondering why her grandparents did not love her. "I know I am adopted," she had told her class during a family presentation project, "but my real family is the people who choose to love me every day. That is what makes someone really related." Her teacher had called me afterward to say that Zara's presentation had sparked important conversations about family diversity that benefited all the students. Looking back, I realized that my parents' cruelty had accidentally given us something precious: the opportunity to build a family based entirely on love, respect, and choice, rather than obligation or blood relation. Our chosen family was stronger than any biological connection because every relationship was intentional and cherished. The financial security was wonderful, but the real victory was emotional. Zara would grow up knowing that she was worth fighting for, that adults who loved her would protect her from people who wanted to hurt her, and that family loyalty should flow both ways or not at all. As for karma, it had worked more thoroughly than I could have orchestrated myself. My parents lost everything they had valued most: money, status, social standing, and family control, through the natural consequences of their own choices. They had chosen cruelty over kindness, greed over generosity, exclusion over inclusion, and they had reaped exactly what they sowed. "Mom, come help me plant this last one," Zara called from the garden. I joined her in the dirt, helping her position a small rose bush that would bloom for years to come. As we worked together, I thought about the lesson this experience had taught us both: that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept unacceptable behavior, even from family. Especially from family. There, Zara announced, stepping back to admire our work. "Now our garden has everything it needs to grow beautiful." She was right about that too. We had planted something that would flourish for years to come, just like the family we had chosen to build together. So, here is what I want to know from all of you watching this. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace and protecting someone you love? Have you experienced family members who thought blood relation gave them permission to be cruel? How did you handle situations where family loyalty conflicted with doing what was right? Share your stories in the comments, because I know many of you have faced similar choices, and your experiences could help someone else find the courage to stand up for justice. If this story resonated with you, Please hit that like button to let me know and subscribe for more real-life family drama stories where karma eventually catches up with people who think wealth and status protect them from consequences. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable bad behavior, even from family. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, real family is not about blood or money or tradition. Real family is about people who choose to love, protect, and support each other through good times and bad. Choose your family wisely, protect them fiercely, and never let anyone convince you that cruelty is acceptable just because it comes from relatives.